You were taught that changing your life takes time, that transformation is a slow, linear process, achieved day by day through accumulated effort, that you must plant small seeds and wait patiently for them to grow, that meaningful results are the product of years of consistent work, and that anything that seems to happen faster than that must be illusion or luck. This is wrong, not partially wrong, structurally wrong. And quantum physics, not as a metaphor, but as a documented structure of reality, confirms this in a way that can change how you understand time, identity, and the possibility of real transformation. What is called a quantum jump is not science fiction. It is the actual behavior of subatomic particles that change states without passing through intermediate stages, without gradualness, without transition. One moment they are here, the next they are there. The jump is complete, instantaneous, and leaves no trace of a path, because no path existed. The question that has changed the lives of a small number of people, and that sits at the heart of what you are about to understand, is this: what if consciousness works the same way? You arrived here because this question was already alive within you, before you even knew how to formulate it. Let me describe your path. At some point, you became interested in personal transformation. You read, you studied, you practiced. You went through phases, intense motivation followed by plateau, doubt, and renewed effort. Eventually, you encountered ideas about manifestation, vibration, and consciousness as a creator of reality. Some of these concepts resonated beyond the intellectual level. They seemed to point to something you had always known, but had never seen named with precision. But the experience of applying these ideas was inconsistent. Sometimes you entered states that clearly changed your perception and energy, and reality around you seemed to respond. Opportunities appeared. The right people showed up. Coincidences that were too specific to be random. And then the state dissolved. The clarity faded. You returned to your habitual reality, like someone waking from a dream in which they were another version of themselves. You wanted to understand how to make that consistent, how to enter that state and remain there long enough for external reality to reorganize around it in a lasting way. And now you have reached the idea of the quantum jump. The idea that you can, in a structured, intentional, repeatable way, shift into another version of yourself with a completeness that is not gradual. That you do not need to build step by step the person you want to become. That the leap is possible now, not after years of work. You are not going to learn a technique here. You are going to recognize a mechanism that is already operating within you, and that, when misunderstood, has been working against you with the same efficiency it could work in your favor. Leaving before the end would mean missing the very layer that connects everything. The quantum jump is not an isolated idea. It is a structure. And structures need to be seen as a whole to make sense. Less than 1% of the people who reach this territory understand what lies beneath the technique. Not because it is hidden, but because it requires questioning something you did not even realize you were assuming about yourself. And that assumption holds the answer to the question that will remain suspended now. A question that will accompany you until the end and, once answered, will reorganize everything you understand about transformation. Why does the same leap that is natural for a quantum particle seem so difficult for a human being? If your consciousness is made of the same field. Before understanding what is changing within you, we need to look at what has always been holding you back. There is a behavior almost everyone exploring the quantum jump repeats. They study the concept. They understand the logic. They become excited about the possibility. And then they do what seems natural. They look for a method, a protocol, a sequence of steps that, if followed correctly, will produce the leap. They find a visualization technique, or a specific guided meditation, or a set of affirmations designed to anchor consciousness in an expanded version of themselves. They practice seriously. Sometimes they feel something, a different state, unusual clarity, a sense that something has shifted. And then they wait for reality to confirm the leap. When confirmation does not come, or comes partially, inconsistently, temporarily, the instinctive conclusion is always the same. The method must be improved. More detail in visualization, more emotional intensity, more practice time, more discipline, more. This is not weakness. It is not lack of dedication. It is the predictable result of being taught to solve problems by applying more effort in the same direction. But here is the inversion almost no one dares to make. The quantum jump does not fail because of lack of technique. It fails because the person trying to execute the technique is still the same person who created the reality they want to leap away from. You cannot leap out of a reality using the identity that generated it. It is like trying to escape your shadow by walking toward it. The shadow moves with you because it is yours, not because the sun is in the wrong place. The central distinction here is between the executor of a technique and the inhabitant of a new identity. The executor uses a method to try to access a different state. The inhabitant has already made the leap at the deepest level, and any technique used afterwards simply confirms and stabilizes what is already true internally. The difference is not in what they do. It is in who they are when they do it. The quantum field, and here the terminology serves as a real anchor, not just decoration, does not respond to declared intentions. It responds to coherence between intention and identity. When the two are aligned, the field collaborates with a fluency that seems supernatural. When they are in conflict, when you declare an intention that contradicts your underlying identity, the field responds to identity, not intention. This explains everything. It explains why your affirmations sometimes seem to echo into emptiness, why visualizations produce temporary states but not structural change, why the leap works in some areas and feels impossible in others, because in some areas your identity is already aligned with the desire, and in others there is a deep fracture between who you say you want to be and who you believe you are. Imagine two rivers born from the same point on a mountain. One flows toward the valley, in harmony with gravity. The other tries to climb upward, with pressure, volume, force. The first arrives. The second exhausts itself. The quantum jump that works is like the first river, not because it is more powerful, but because it moves in the direction of what is already true in its deepest nature. But here is what most people stop hearing, and it is exactly what changes everything. The real quantum jump has a mechanism, and when you see this mechanism clearly, it is both simpler and deeper than any technique you have ever tried. It begins with a quantum physics observation called superposition. In simple terms, before being observed and collapsing into a defined form, a particle exists in multiple states simultaneously. It is, at the same time, all possible versions of itself. What determines which version manifests is the act of observation, and more precisely, the state of the observer. Now apply this to your life. At this very moment, multiple possible versions of your reality coexist as uncollapsed potential, not as poetic metaphor, as structure. The version in which you already have what you desire exists as possibility, not as a future that must be built, but as a present potential that must be observed from the right state to collapse into manifestation. The quantum jump, then, is not a journey into the future. It is a shift in the point of observation, a change so complete in your internal state that the field of possibilities begins collapsing toward the potential being observed. This has a consequence that changes everything. The leap does not happen in external reality first. It happens in the observer. And this is where the mechanism becomes precise in a way few people teach. The observer in the quantum jump is not your conscious mind, not the self that visualizes, affirms, or practices techniques. It is something deeper, what neuroscience calls the baseline state, the set of beliefs, emotions, and patterns operating beneath awareness that determine, without you noticing, which version of reality you are habituated to observing. This baseline state is like soil where a seed is planted. You can place the most expensive seed in poor soil and nothing will grow. You can place a simple seed in fertile soil and growth will look like magic. The soil is the baseline state, and most quantum jump practices work on the seed, the technique, the visualization, the affirmation, without touching the soil. Take a deep breath now. Place a hand on the center of your chest. Feel the state you are carrying in this moment. Not what you think, not what you want, but what is present in the body. That is your current soil. Simply observe, without judgment. The practical consequence is that changing the baseline state, changing the soil, is what produces real and lasting leaps. And changing the soil does not happen through more conscious mental effort. It happens through something different. Something most people have never tried because no one presented it this way. But before we get there is an obstacle operating between understanding this mechanism and actually being able to apply it. An obstacle so specific that when you see it, you will recognize it immediately, because it is the exact reason you have come close to the leap but have not completed it. And when you truly understand this, you realize there is a blockage no one mentions. What blocks you is not what you think. The fatal error of the quantum jump is so subtle that most people spend years without seeing it. It is not lack of technique, not lack of belief, not low vibration, karma, or energetic blockage needing healing. The fatal error is structurally simpler and therefore harder to detect. The fatal error is trying to leap into a new version of yourself without including the current version in the leap. Feel the difference. When you practice the quantum jump in the common way, at some level you are rejecting who you are now in order to become who you want to be. You treat the present version of yourself as a problem to overcome, something to leave behind, something that gets in the way, something that must be replaced by a better version. And this rejection, this subtle but constant distancing from who you are now, creates the very fracture that prevents the leap. Why? Because the quantum field does not operate through substitution. It operates through integration. The expanded version of you is not a different person who will replace who you are. It is the full expression of who you already are, including all layers, including the patterns you want to change, including the parts you do not yet fully understand. The distinction here is between identity escape and identity expansion. Identity escape tries to leap away from who you are. Identity expansion includes who you are and moves from there into fuller expression. The first creates tension, the field reads as incoherence. The second creates coherence, the field amplifies. Your resistance to fully accepting who you are now, the feeling that you must be different before you deserve the leap, is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It is the final guardian before real progress. Because that guardian is telling you something precise. The leap you are trying to make is still carrying the logic of the reality you want to leave. You are trying to leap away using the same force that keeps you where you are. And here is the question that will stay with you. The most important one you can ask yourself now, and one I will not answer yet because the answer will only make sense after what comes next. What would happen to your quantum jump practice if you stopped trying to become someone different and began allowing who you already are to expand fully? This is not rhetorical. It is a portal. There is a specific way to work with this guardian. Not to fight it, suppress it, or ignore it, that collapses the fracture and creates the conditions for a leap that does not need to be repeated, because it changes the soil, not just the seed. And this way requires a different kind of courage than anything you have tried before. If you have reached this point, you are already operating at a level of awareness most people exploring the quantum jump never reach. You are seeing the mechanism beneath the mechanism. So how do you cross this final guardian? Here is what changes everything. The solution will not seem big enough. Prepare for that. Because what separates a quantum jump that works once from one that permanently changes the structure of your reality is not an elaborate technique, not a 7-step process, not a 40-minute daily protocol. It is an inner gesture that takes less than a minute, and when practiced with real presence, reorganizes the soil in which everything grows. The gesture is this: radical inclusion of the current version of you. Practically speaking, it works like this. When you are about to enter any quantum jump practice, before visualizing the expanded version, before affirming the new state, you do something different. You look directly at who you are right now, not to change, not to fix, to fully include. You say internally, with as much presence as you can gather, I see who I am now. I include this. And from here, I expand. This is not a self-esteem affirmation, not a self-compassion technique. It is a quantum act of coherence. You are removing the fracture between observer and observed, between who you are and who you want to be, creating unified soil from which the leap can occur completely. This answers the question left suspended earlier. What happens when you stop trying to become someone different and allow who you already are to expand? The guardian dissolves. Because the guardian exists precisely to protect the parts of you that are being rejected. When rejection stops, when inclusion happens, there is nothing left to guard. Close your eyes now. Take one deep breath and say internally, with full presence, I see who I am now. I include this, not as an exercise, as a real act. Feel what happens in the body when you stop, even for a moment, trying to be different. What this resolves is inconsistency. When the soil is unified, when there is no fracture between current identity and desired identity, the external field begins to reflect the internal state with a consistency that once seemed impossible. Not because you found the perfect technique, because you removed the main obstacle to coherence. But there is a deeper layer that determines whether this soil will remain stable or fragment again within weeks. A layer connected to something that happens long before any conscious practice and operates so automatically, most people never realize it can be changed. Comment now. I include and expand. Not as a slogan, as a declaration of the state you just chose. Writing is an act of collapse. You are turning inner intention into external form, sealing what began here. And that deeper layer, that is where everything you learned becomes permanent, or fades in days. What you just understood did not originate now. It has roots going deep. In traditions that existed long before personal development language, in sciences that reached the same conclusions through entirely different paths, in philosophers who described this mechanism without quantum physics to name it. What is extraordinary is not that this is true. It is that so many different sources arrived at the same place. Advaita Vedanta, a philosophical school from India over 3,000 years old, describes reality as Brahman, a single undivided consciousness from which individual experience emerges. Its practice is not building a better self. It is removing mistaken identifications that obscure what already is, whole, expanded, without fracture. In this language, the quantum jump is not a leap into another version of you. It is recognition that the limited version was always a layer over what you truly are. Shamanic traditions of the Andes and the Amazon describe healing not as adding what is missing, but restoring what has been fragmented. The shaman does not create wholeness. They remove what blocks it, reintegrate what was separated, restore coherence between a person and their own field. The quantum jump that works follows the same logic, not adding a new identity, but integrating fragmented parts of the current one. Modern neuroscience has documented something contemplative masters knew empirically. States of high heart coherence, where heart rhythm synchronizes with breath and brainwaves, produce measurable expansion of perception, increased creativity and intuition, and a subjective sense of effortless clarity. Research from the HeartMath Institute shows this state alters not only internal physiology, but also the electromagnetic field around the body, making the individual quite literally a different field in the environment. Taoism, with its concept of Te, natural virtue or potency, describes excellence not as something achieved through force, but revealed when unnecessary effort is removed. The Taoist archer does not focus on the arrow. They become so present, so fully themselves, that the arrow goes where it must. The quantum jump that works has this same quality. It is not achieved. It is allowed. Vedanta, Andean shamanism, HeartMath neuroscience, Taoism, thousands of years apart. Different continents, radically different methods, all describing the same central mechanism. Real transformation is not building something new on top of something old. It is revealing what is already present when layers of fragmentation are removed. And now this understanding is yours, not as external information you learned, as recognition of something already operating within you. now given a name, a map, a way to be accessed intentionally rather than by accident. The distinction separating those who experience the leap once from those who live from the leap is not luck. It is fragmentation versus integrity. A fragmented field produces fragmented experiences. An integrated field, coherent, without fracture between who you are and who you are becoming, produces integrated realities. Like light encountering no obstacle, it does not need more force. It needs less blockage. And when you embody this, not as an idea but as identity, something changes that cannot be undone. You are not learning to perform quantum jumps. You are recognizing that you already are a quantum field constantly leaping. And what changed now is that you understand where and why. The difference between the person who arrived here and the person leaving here is not information. It is orientation. Your inner compass has shifted, not because I gave you a new direction, but because you removed what was making it point the wrong way. We are those who choose integrity as a starting point, not a destination. Who include who we are now as a condition for the leap, not an obstacle to it. Who understand the expanded version is not another person, it is this person, fully seen. This identity is not achieved, it is recognized. And recognition, once real, cannot be undone. You may forget it for a day, for a week. But when you return, and you will, it will be faster than before, because the soil has changed, and changed soil does not forget. If you want to keep deepening in this field, do not subscribe like someone collecting content. Subscribe to this frequency of understanding. Each video here is another layer of the same territory you have just truly touched. And if what happened in you during this video is resonating in your energy now, you already know what to do. You are someone who understands the leap does not require leaving anyone behind, not even the version of you that felt stuck. The quantum jump is not an escape. It is integration so complete that reality has no choice but to reflect the new coherence. You do not need perfect conditions. You do not need to have resolved everything. You do not need to eliminate all fear or doubt. You need only one thing. Stop trying to leap away from who you are and start expanding from here. The field responds to coherence, not to effort. Comment the word leap below. It is an act of registering that something changed, not a promise of future perfection, but a declaration of present awareness. Now, what you understood today is real, but there is a layer operating before everything discussed here. Deeper, older, more decisive than any conscious practice. In the next video, I will show why the quantum jump you try to make while awake is undone every night while you sleep, and what happens in the hypnagogic state that can, if used correctly, stabilize the leap in a way no daytime practice can replicate. Everything that is yours is already coherent with you.